How's it going, everybody? Thank you for stopping by. Today, I'm interviewing Nikolaos Cacos, the CEO of Blue Sky Uranium, in what is always a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, and one that does not include any professional advice whatsoever. Mr. Cacos, thank you for investing your time in me, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me for your program. Just call me Niko.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. And the pleasure is all mine, of course. As a first-time visitor to the channel, though, why don't we start over with an overview of who you are, what your company does, and why you think you're the best man for the job?
Okay. Well, my name, like you said, is Nikolaos Cacos, and I've been in the mineral exploration industry for about 30 years now. My background is I have a master's degree in international business, and I've been involved with the Grosso Group, who basically got involved in Argentina back in 1993, just as the country began to liberalize its investment laws to permit international investment into the mining industry. That was a very unique opportunity for us because we felt here's a country that's arguably the seventh or eighth largest in landmass in the world and has virtually never been systematically explored for mining. So the mining opportunity in Argentina was exemplary, and that's when we got involved. And we've had a lot of success with other sister and related companies along the way. And right now, I'm running another Grosso Group managed company called Blue Sky Uranium. And what we have discovered in southern Argentina is a brand new uranium-vanadium district that is has a strike length of about 145 kilometers long, about an average of 50 kilometers wide. It's an enormous district.
Yeah.
And we've been exploring and developing this, and we've identified to date our first deposit, which is just under 23 million pounds of uranium and 11.5 million pounds of vanadium. And we feel that these districts, both in scale and in geological similarity to some of the other districts around the world, like those in Kazakhstan, has the potential to rank amongst the largest and lowest cost districts in the world. So it's an incredible opportunity, and I think it has to do with the Argentina not having been explored systematically over the last, 50 or 100 years. So low-lying fruit, so to speak, and a very sharp exploration team on our side.
Strike length of 150 kilometers, 50 in width. It's almost half of the country that I'm in right now, which is Belgium. So it's pretty big.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So a few interesting things that you noted on there. I hope we're going to touch upon most of them. First of all, you mentioned that you work with the Grosso Group. That's you've got three companies basically under the umbrella of that company, under the umbrella of that group. There's a gold, there's a lithium, and there's that uranium company that we're going to talk about today. You operate as a senior executive on all three of them, though. Doesn't that take away from your focus on Blue Sky?
It certainly does not. These are junior companies, and as a CEO or as an executive, our functions are really, we find the opportunities, we set the strategy, and then we hire the specialists required in order to move these companies forward. We've got the contacts in the financial industry, so we're able to finance them. And as a junior company, it also allows us to spread the cost of not just an executive like me, but of other staff, of our CFO, of our corporate secretary and admin staff over three companies, as opposed to, layering this over one. So we can hire better caliber people who typically command a higher salary, but we're able to spread that over three companies in this case, so it keeps the overhead costs relatively low.
Okay, do you get paid like one salary for all three companies?
Yes, I get paid on a per company basis, and it basically keeps our salaries manageable on a per company basis.
Okay, yeah, fair points. Let's talk about
for example, in Blue Sky, my salary is $60,000 a year.
Okay.
I challenge find another CEO with 30 years of experience that will work for $60,000 a year.
It's true. No, this
Yeah.
is something that I was gonna ask you later on, but it's okay that you're giving me this figure because I like making a ratio with it. I'm gonna write it down. Let's talk about Blue Sky, as I was saying, the company that you came here to talk about more specifically, and then let's maybe start off with sort of the basic metrics. I know what your land package is right now. Before we get into more specifically on the projects, so you're, let's call it, I wrote down 30 million, but you're like between 30 and 35 million Canadian dollar company. How's the cash and debt situation right now?
Well, we have no debt. I'm very pleased to say that. We've just completed a fundraise just a few months ago. So we're well funded right now to carry out and complete the current exploration and drill programs that we have ongoing. We have a two-pronged program. One is we announced last fall a program on the Ivana deposit, which was a program that was to include additional drilling so that we can accomplish two things. One, to tighten up the drill holes spacing within that deposit so that we can upgrade the confidence that we have in that deposit, and therefore upgrading the quality of that deposit. And the second objective of that was to step out from that deposit and see, is there room for any growth there? And we've already published some success, and I think over the next week or so we're going to have additional results on that. I'm feeling optimistic, but we're going to wait for the results to come out. The second program that we had and is ongoing is we have additional targets that are within a radius of about 30 kilometers from this Ivana deposit. And the idea is, by drilling out these various targets, can we find another deposit that's nearby? Mm-hmm. So basically it's an expansion mode.
Okay. If you don't mind, what is your cash position right now, more specifically? I'm trying to calculate the enterprise value.
Yeah, we've got about $3 million in cash right now.
Okay,
the drill programs are quite cheap because the deposit lies within the first 15 meters from surface. Mm-hmm. So the holes typically don't go very low, very deep rather.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to touch upon all that you just said as well. 27. What is your SG&A burn rate? You're keeping that low, I'm guessing. But you recently ran that financing that you're mentioning. It was at 15 cents, so 1.5, with a full warrant. How many warrants and options do you have outstanding right now? What is your total overhang?
Well, we have a number of warrants actually right now. Yeah, we've got about 114 million warrants with an average price of 27 cents. Mm-hmm. So as the idea being, of course, as if we continue to get good results and the market appreciates the results and we get a better valuation in the market, we're going to see a lot of these warrants begin to get converted into shares, and that could typically bring close to over $30 million into our company. So it would basically be self-funding us forward towards development.
Okay, so you're probably not going to have to raise cash into this, tough bear market sort of situation.
That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. Yes.
Okay. So to summarize what I've heard so far, as a potential shareholder, I would be buying the Argentinian assets for about $27 million. That's the enterprise value that I calculated. Let me try and figure out what exactly I would be buying, though. This might be an interesting point, as by the way, on your website it says that Blue Sky is one of Argentina's best positioned uranium and vanadium exploration companies. Who are your peers down there, and why do you think you're better off than them?
Well, our peers down there, really, there's the Argentinian CNEA, which is the Argentinian Nuclear Agency. They own a deposit in the province just to the south of us. It's a smaller deposit. It's in hard rock. It's deeper. It's more expensive to develop. What makes our deposit really quite attractive, not just the size, but also because it sits in close to surface in an unconsolidated environment. It makes it very, very cheap, basically, to extract the uranium. Our initial preliminary economic analysis showed that we can extract a pound of uranium just over $16 in cash cost, which basically, makes potentially makes a deposit like this viable in almost any economic environment, let alone an environment now where the price of uranium is north of $45. So
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk more about Argentina though, because I'm thinking about jurisdictional risk here. I
sure.
never thought of Argentina as a uranium mining jurisdiction, and I'm probably not the only one. But there's also I do think of South America as a gold, silver jurisdiction. That's also what I have a portion of my portfolio in. But you get a lot of news right now out of some of Argentina's neighbors where we see companies potentially pulling back from investing money into copper, for example, exploration projects because of political uncertainty and the potential for government royalties, basically. So what can you tell me about Argentina as a uranium jurisdiction, specifically in the size of the risks there?
Well, Argentina, most investors, it's interesting that you bring that up, and it's a very good point, because most investors that I speak to don't realize that Argentina is not just a nuclear country, but is one of these countries that's been in the nuclear business for almost as long as the United States has. They've been in the nuclear business since the 1950s, and they're extremely well. They're very sophisticated industry there in the uranium industry. They're very well regarded. They're involved in every facet of the nuclear industry. They've got nuclear power plants that are up and running, research reactors. They've got a pilot enrichment plant. In fact, even the president of the International Atomic Energy Agency is an Argentinian, which is kind of a tip of the hat, so to speak, to the caliber of the sophistication of the Argentina uranium industry. So, from our vantage point, what makes that really interesting is that all the laws and the legal framework that's required to be in place in order to handle and move nuclear materials and radioactive materials are already in place. We don't have to wait for Parliament to have to sit, to debate, to implement all these. It really, really shortcuts the duration, for when we decide to go forward into production, so to speak. So it cuts that period dramatically. And secondly, from a mining point of view, I think Argentina is so underdeveloped in its mining, and it has so much potential. And the government, all governments of all, and I've been there for 30 years, whether from the right all the way through the left to the populist, they all need revenues. That's really what it comes down to. And mining is recognized as one of those industries that has the potential to deliver on these revenues. And it's recognized as a very underdeveloped industry in Argentina. So we've seen support for the mining industry through all political stripes of different types of government parties and so forth. So I think from that vantage point, we are always in contact with the people in the federal government, with the provincial government. In fact, the province that we're active in is actually owns a nuclear research company, sort of a crown corporation, so to speak. And we work together with them as well. They know what we're doing. They're supportive of what we're doing. So it really is an excellent environment for us. And from a jurisdictional risk point of view, we feel extremely comfortable. We've managed to work in Argentina for 30 years. And from a mining point of view, it's been a very stable industry to be in.
Mm-hmm. What was interesting to me, Niko, right there, is that you sort of said if and then corrected it to when we go into production. Before I move on talking about Argentina, which one is it? Do you want to go into production there, or do you hope to sell this project to a major?
Yeah, I mean, while we are excellent explorationists, I proudly say that about our team. And I know that our team is probably capable of putting this project into production. I also do recognize that going into production involves a different set of risks, a different set of political clout that's required and financial clout. And I think we wouldn't proceed to do that on ourselves. We either would sell it, we would partner up perhaps with a big a mid-tier or a large uranium producer that would spearhead and then maybe get some kind of an interest or whatever in terms of going forward into production. We wouldn't be the ones doing that work. It would be somebody else who's done this time and time again. So what kind of a deal would we make? Well, it would depend on the circumstances at that time, but it would be a deal, I think, that would be the best deal for our shareholders.
You're gonna have to find somebody to do that deal with, though, right? So I'm just wondering, have you seen or talked to or any majors or companies that I might have heard of that are lurking in Argentina or ready to spend exploration dollars or investment dollars in South America right now?
We've had a number of companies sign confidentiality agreements and express interest, but I think at this point, I think because of the low cost nature of exploration and the potential that the next $2 or $3 million could yield, another potentially 20 or 30 million pound uranium deposit, I think we owe our shareholders the opportunity for us to spend that money and to see if we can uncover that kind of value within the company before we start engaging in serious discussions about moving the project towards production with any kind of a major. Happy to show the project to anybody that wants to look at it, but we're not ready to begin any discussions at this point. I think we're just a little bit too early.
Hey, I want to look at it, but I'm not really looking to buy a $50 million project right now, or potentially more. You're mentioning low cost a couple of times when you're talking about Argentina, but we can talk about Argentina and not talk about inflation, though, right? The inflation in Argentina is now nearly 100%. So how are you dealing with that? Is that not affecting your production cost?
No, because right now it affects how we pay our employees. We have to adjust their salaries at least on a quarterly basis. Our staff down there, because their purchasing power basically erodes very, very quickly. And but from our point of view, though, it actually decreases the cost of operating in Argentina because we raise the money in Canadian dollars, and we only send down there to Argentina on a monthly cash call basis, so that we're able to manage our treasury very effectively that way. Our projections are they're on international economics, so they're based basically in US dollars, so it doesn't really affect us that much.
Sure, I guess I understand the payment situation, but what about the sort of the security situation? I mean, because that's clearly hyperinflation, 100% inflation. How's the situation in terms of, like, are people trying to protest? Are they, taking to the streets, not want to work, breaking stuff and stuff like that? How have you experienced that?
No, we haven't seen anything like that. No, I mean, I'm hoping we won't see anything like that, but we haven't seen anything like that. And I know that there's elections coming up soon, and things can change that way. But Argentina has been a relatively politically fairly stable country in the last 30 years that we've been operating in, and it's one of the safest countries. I feel very safe when I walk around in that country too.
What do you think is going to happen on the upcoming elections, or what do you want to see happening?
Well, I'd like to see a government get elected that will provide more economic stability for Argentina, and basically, be able to preserve and create an environment where wealth can be created locally there, and the locals can benefit. We're a foreign country, and I don't really want to weigh in on that because we're guests in that country, even though we've been there for 30 years. So we'll be friendly with any government because we are guests, but we'd like to see what's best for Argentinians, and Argentinians, I think, are the ones best able to decide that.
Well, you're going to be friendly with any government, but what if the government is not friendly with you? Like, what if on a extreme left government gets elected and they want to raise mining taxes and stuff like that? How does that influence you? Does that change your thesis?
Well, that could, I mean, if they tried to make changes to their economic policies, which would affect the economics of our deposit or potential production, then we would of course begin having discussions and explain why that's not good. So I'll reserve judgment on that for if things like that happen, then we would have to react to that and protect the interests of our shareholders as best we can.
Okay, but you think the likelihood for that happening is rather low. Is that correct?
I believe so, because if they did something like that, I think they begin closing up the mining industry there. They would lessen investment into that country and into that industry, and a lot of talent that is involved in terms of finding and extracting resources in the mining industry would simply, dissipate very quickly, and that would be not very beneficial for Argentina. And I think so far our experience has indicated that all the different governments, all the different politicians do recognize that.
If you think everybody recognizes, though, and if you see value in that jurisdiction, and you obviously see value in your projects, which again we'll talk about in a second, but essentially your company helped find a new uranium district over there in Argentina. It's huge, as you told me, and that was during the last cycle. It's also the largest discovery in the country by date, I believe. And so having all that, and you're happy with the jurisdiction, all that, you're still just as I said, $30 million Canadian market cap company, and your stock was lagging some of your, for example, Canadian and African peers. Why do you think the market isn't seeing the value? Like, what are you missing, or potentially what is the market missing here, Niko?
Well, I think the market right now is really, we're at an inflection point, really, in terms of creating value for Blue Sky. And I think the next stage here is the market is waiting to see, are your step out holes in some of these additional targets, drilling targets, going to yield some additional uranium resources? Because I think that is a potentially big value adding event for Blue Sky. We've already proven through some preliminary economics that this project has some excellent economics that potentially could be viable in most the uranium and pricing environments. But the second leg is, we're calling this a district. Are there other deposits here? Can you show us additional deposits in the area so that we can see whether or not it truly is a district? And I think the moment we start to come back with some positive drill holes and show that at such and such target we're starting to get some ore grade intercepts, I think the market is watching us right now, and I think the market's going to give us that proper valuation. I think we were trading fairly well. There was a big pullback during the whole market pullback in the last few months, and I think we're just lagging a little bit in terms of bouncing back. But I think come September, we're going to recover some of that value, and then I'm expecting that sometime in September, early October, we'll have some results from that other drill program that I was talking about.
As long as you're not raising money into this market right now, and you're keeping your head down, and you're working for it, that's something that I, for example, would like seeing. And you're mentioning project economics. That's obviously something that I also want to talk about. Following your 2019 PEA, I believe, is that what you had in there was 22 million pounds. That's uranium, and another 11. What's that?
11. Yep, I said yes.
And then another 11.5 is what I wrote down, is uranium and vanadium. And so that 11.5 million pounds, that's the interesting deposit for me, mainly because of the metallurgy there, because vanadium and uranium have to be separated, which I've been told by a geologist friend of mine is not always cheap. Like, it's not as cheap as the metallurgy on, let's say, pitch blende, uraninite. Now, you ran your PEA, it all came out well, but you ran that PEA at like $15 vanadium. Whereas vanadium, because by the way, the price of vanadium, for people that don't know, they're relatively volatile. They go through these massive booms and busts that are short duration booms and busts, but they're very big. But the vanadium price right now is about $7. So that's less than half of what you calculated your PEA on. And you're only running on what? Yeah, 50% recovery, I guess, on that vanadium. So you might find yourself in a situation where it costs you more money to separate the uranium from the vanadium that you'd get from the sale of that vanadium. I'm guessing, or is that not the case? Like, how are you going to work around that, and how does the fact that vanadium is dropping in prices, how does that influence your, metallurgy cost, production cost, I guess?
Right. Well, even back during that PEA, the vanadium the vanadium credit basically made up around anywhere between 5 and 10% of the overall deposit. So it wasn't a huge amount. It was a nice credit to have, by all means, but it wasn't the real value there. In terms of separating the uranium and vanadium, this is first of all, I think we're very fortunate to have a world-class metallurgist like Chuck Edwards, who's looking after all the mineral processing and the metallurgy for this. Now, Chuck was a chief metallurgist for Cameco for many, many years. He's a world authority on this. And he came up with a very, very simple, low-cost, two-stage separation process to extract basically the uranium and the vanadium. Number one, because the uranium and vanadium occur in a single mineral called carnotite, and it doesn't occur in the hard pebbles. As we scoop up the ground, we separate it through a sieve and wash the samples so that you're able to reduce and you get rid of the large pebbles. And this what has the effect of really reducing the mass that you're dealing with by about 77%, and it concentrates the uranium and vanadium by about 4 times. Now this then goes into a alkaline leach concentrate, something that's been done again and again, and it's really cheap, the sodium bicarbonate really, and it simultaneously precipitates both the uranium and the vanadium. There's no additional process involved for separating the vanadium. It's just a byproduct that happens anyways. Okay. So there's no additional cost for us. So the fact that we get a bit of a credit in the vanadium is great. And the other benefit, of course, is we could sell the vanadium afterwards locally in Argentina, because the country has a big oil and gas industry, and they make a lot of steel piping. They have to import all their vanadium needs. So if we have vanadium being produced domestically, there would potentially be a market for it within the country in Argentina.
And then 11.5 million pounds, that's uranium and vanadium. How much is it? Because you said something like 5%, is that right?
Yeah, between 5 and 10% is basically the value of the overall project.
Okay, so total would be like 32 million pounds uranium specifically that you would have, because if you say 10% of the 11.5, 1.5 is gone, and then so it's 32 million pounds. What grade is that?
The vanadium?
Uranium.
Oh, the uranium grade is 0.03%.
0.03%. Okay, but that's relatively low grade when you start comparing it to something like in the Athabasca, for example, but you're telling me that it's not that deep, right?
Well, no, if you compare it to Athabasca, it's not that deep, and it's not in hard rock, and the economics required to make deposits in Athabasca economic are very, very different. 0.03% is basically, if you look at the Inkai mine in Kazakhstan, which has over 240 million pounds of uranium, they're grading at 0.03%. And we have a very similar geology to these kinds of deposits. That's what's really quite unique about this uranium district, that it has the potential to be large, low grade, but also very low cost. So very, very economic.
Okay. What is the potential for finding to grow that resource? What's the potential for finding more? And do you think you're going to find it at higher grade, or do you expect the same grade? What do you think?
I think, well, we've spent the last 15 years or so exploring this entire district on surface, and we studied it fairly well. There are uranium occurrences throughout this entire 145 kilometer corridor. So we think that the opportunity of finding additional deposits are high. Certainly in the area close to the Ivana deposit, we think that geological environment there is prospective for finding additional deposits at surface, like what we have at the Ivana deposit. And as we move northwards, we feel that there's deposit for deeper but in situ type of recovery type of deposits. So there is potential all along here. Now, we have to keep in mind that Kazakhstan, which is one of the world's largest districts of uranium and produces nearly half of the world's uranium today, they've spent the last 50 years developing their districts there. Haas, we just got started on this, so there's many years of exploration that are ahead of us, and I think it's important that we do it step by step, systematically. And as we begin to uncover more and more, and we move some into production, then there'll be additional funds to be able to explore and make new discoveries along the road.
And you think you're going to keep those project economics? I think you're going to keep them with that grade of 0.03%.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's no reason why not.
Okay. No, I'm asking in terms of you think you're gonna find that high. I mean, that high of a grade. Do you think you're gonna still keep on finding it as you grow the resource?
Yes, I think as we make new discoveries will come in different. Grades. Of course, those that are in around the 0.03% average are going to be economic deposits. Mm-hmm. Of course, there'll be some deposits there that are running less, and there may be other deposits that are running higher. Mm-hmm. I mean, just in the last drill results that we put out that were step out to our Ivana deposit, we got some drill holes that were basically 5 times the grade of what we have at the Ivana deposit. So it was 0.15%. So there's potential for higher grade as well.
Okay. So what is the plan to find that? Like, what are you doing step by step? You hang up the phone here. What's the next 3 things that you're going to do?
Well, the next 3 things that we're going to do, number one, was to drill up the Ivana deposit and be able to upgrade it into a higher category, so we have more confidence in the resources that are there. That drill program is now complete, and we're receiving all the drill assays for that, and we expect to have those published in the next couple of weeks.
Are you expecting, I'm sorry to interrupt you before you continue to the second step, are you expecting to lose a lot of pounds moving up the categories?
I'm not expecting that will happen. And that is because of the second step that I was talking about.
Please continue.
And the second step was to step outside the boundaries of the original deposit and to see whether or not we're finding additional uranium. And in the last set that we initially published, that was the case. We were finding additional uranium deposits, uranium values outside of the deposit. So that gives me a lot of confidence that, yes, I think we're going to be able to not just upgrade this deposit, but potentially even grow this deposit. It'll be larger than 22.5 million pounds than what we already published. And then step 3 is to go out and see, okay, there's another 4 uranium exploration targets that are within a 30-kilometer radius of the Ivana deposit. And by drill testing those, we're going to have hopefully have some make additional uranium deposit discoveries there, and then we could run this conceivably in a production scenario, like a hub and spoke scenario, where we can have one central facility and be able to truck and move and process all the uranium within that region.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Do you think that? Do you think that that's what you're going to be spending your money on? I'm guessing, but do you think you're going to be mostly using cash to do all the expenses, or are you going to be using shares and cash combinations and stuff like that? I'm just trying to figure out how much dilution we could expect.
Yeah, no, I think the last financing that we did is enough money to do all the drill testing that I spoke about. That we've completed right now. Steps 1 and 2. Step 3 is still ongoing. We're gonna, $3 million gets you a long way, because it buys you a lot of holes in there. So because the deposit is relatively shallow, and we don't have to go very deep, 3,000 or 4,000 meters of drilling can actually drill out a lot of holes in an area. So we'll be able to complete that, I believe, by this fall. And then at that point, we're going to take stock of what we've got, and either do and hopefully be in a position where we're going to do a new resource calculation, or perhaps begin to migrate the whole project towards a preliminary feasibility study, a PFS.
Okay, and that's expected next year.
That will take, yeah, if we begin that process this fall or early winter, it'll probably take about 10 months to complete.
10
And
months.
that is something that would cost in the ballpark between 10 and 15 million dollars. And how we fund that, well, number one will depend a lot on how our stock is trading. But there are many engineering companies that will give you credit to be able to fund that too. So we would have to explore these options closer to that event.
You see how the stock is going to be trading. Is there a, like, I'm guessing you don't want to raise money at $30 million Canadian market cap. Would you want to raise money at 60, or would you want to wait for the hundreds? What do you think is a fair value to raise money at?
Yeah, I think raising money, excuse me, north of not 60, but closer, 80 to $100 million. I think at that point we would raise the $30 million. That would be attractive.
It's interesting. So that would mean that you think right now the company is undervalued.
I do believe the company's undervalued. I think we're in a buoyant uranium market. I think, and the market is projected to continue to grow for many, many years. I think uranium is going to be in demand for a long time going forward. I believe that our market has had a pull, specifically for Blue Sky. There's been a sell-off, but we haven't been alone on that. We've seen all the companies basically sell off, and we're seeing some of the larger companies now begin to creep back upwards. That's typical in any sort of mining scenario. The larger companies get valued first, and then the money trickles down to the juniors. I think in the next month, after into September, we're going to see a better valuation for Blue Sky. And then beyond that, as we put drill results out, I think that's going to be a revaluation of where we stand.
If you think the money is going to trickle down to the juniors, though, and you think now it's undervalued, how come you're not putting your own money into this? I mean, the last time you bought, according to your SEDI filings, was a while back. So what's happening there?
Well, I've got a number of shares right now, and I think our insiders, friends, associates, our family, we own arguably about 60 million shares of the company altogether. So we've got a sizable position in this company right now, and I think that speaks volumes for where our heart is and sort of where our head is, and that we believe in the company, and the fact that we also keep our overhead costs really low, my salary really low, I think goes to show that we're all betting that what's going to be good for shareholders basically is going to be good for all of us. We're trying to align all those interests.
Can we focus on you specifically, though, here for a second? Do you have an idea of what your average per share price is that you bought? Like, I mean, are you in the money right now?
My average per share price is probably around the 25 cents.
Okay. 25 cents. That's good to know. I like making a ratio between how much of your own money have you invested in this company versus what your salary is. But because your salary is that low, I guess that ratio would be beneficial here. The 60,000 that you mentioned at the beginning, is that your base salary, or is that your total comp?
That's total compensation for Blue Sky, yes.
Okay. Yeah, fair. I'm asking more about it because that's not what.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I don't mind.
It's normally, coming out of Canada, you would have different numbers. That's mostly the companies that I focus on. I think you figured it out throughout this interview. I'm just trying to look for what might be potential issues with the company, things that are not aligned and stuff like that. Since this is the CEO barbecue after all, and let me maybe make your life easier besides that, and give you the magic wand here. This is the question that I like asking, is that if you can just take a magic wand, wave it, and make something go away regarding your company, whatever risk it might be, what would you wave that stick at?
I would waive it at the exploration risk. I'm impatient because I would love that, every time we get out there, we find a target and we drill something, that we pull out some potentially economic drill holes that would make life much, much easier.
Exploration. What do you mean when you say exploration risk?
Well, that's the risk. That's the world that we live in. In the junior exploration company, it's a high risk world where the rewards are potentially very high, and I guess that's what really makes this industry very attractive. But sometimes you need to have a strong stomach. You test the target, and your chief geologist comes back and goes, "Nope, we didn't find what we thought we were looking for there," and you move on to the next one. And you need a strong stomach to be able to pick yourself up and say, "Okay, the next one's going to be there for us," right? Because of A, B, and C, and what we've in our studies and what's been done. So while the thrill of the ride can be fun, I think that's the number one thing that I like to see. Get out there and drill a target, and bingo, we have another Ivana, so to speak, or two or three.
Is that what has stopped you so far? Because you say you've been there for a number of years. I'm just trying to figure out how come you're not already in production, already partnered with somebody. Is that what stopped you?
No, well, that's not the case. We started back in 2006, and it was on the opposite end of the project of where we are now. It was on a northwestern side. And started exploring coming downwards, and then we made some positive drill holes along the way, but then we continued sort of downwards, and then the whole uranium industry went to sleep, so to speak, after 2011, and we had put the project on care and maintenance for a few years. Post Fukushima nuclear disaster, I think everything that was in the nuclear uranium industry went to sleep. And it really wasn't until 2017 that we were approached with a geologist from Argentina, Guillermo Pensado, who's our vice president of exploration now. And it was unique because he had a master's in geology from Queen's University. So he was very fluent in English, well educated, and he had worked with Cameco, and he was a uranium expert. And he says, I've been following your company. You guys, I've got some ideas, and it's something very interesting. And we funded some of his ideas, and very quickly he made the discovery at the Ivana deposit. And then within a year after that, we turned that into a resource calculation. Then a year later, we went into PEA. So it really moved very quickly. And then, of course, the pandemic situation kind of put things on pause for a while. And restrictions in Argentina were quite severe. You couldn't even move between the provinces there. And that really slowed us down a bit. But then it was this year again, we were able to pick up. And we've been drilling basically since early spring. And I'm just hoping now, waiting for results to come out, and our geologists to say, that magic wand worked.
Fair enough. I think I'm getting a better view of the story. It's not a popular one. Not many people talk about you on the internet, I guess.
Okay.
But if you have a good story, I guess you should be getting the word out, right? I'm assuming you do have any plans or maybe contracts in place for promotion. Are you doing anything in the marketing side of the story?
We certainly are. I mean, right now, in the last couple of months, we've certainly turned things down because the state of the market, the way it is, we don't like, wasting money. But no, we certainly do have a program. We're always out there. We're on social media. We do a lot of interviews, a lot of conferences we've been doing, even during the pandemic time. We did a lot of Zoom calls like the one that we're doing right now. And it's been cost effective, and as we uncover more, I think we've got a lot of. It was interesting in the last financing that we did. Half of it was taken up by institutions, and I think that's going to be the real game changer for us. Up until now, we've been largely a retail held stock, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when institutions begin to get involved, there's a new momentum that happens in the market, and I think as that catches on with additional good results coming out, I think that's going to help revalue where our market cap is.
Okay, you say that you don't like wasting money. Nobody does, especially me.
No.
Could you talk to me a little bit more specifically about your marketing budget and what you're spending on it?
We spend right now, we've got allocated, I guess, about $300,000 a year.
300 annually. Okay, that's not the group. Grosso as a group. That's Blue Sky
No. That's specifically marketing activities.
Okay.
Marketing
Well,
and corporate development, I think. Yeah.
I think I'm getting a fuller picture of
Okay.
what's going on here. I think I understand it. I'm almost about to let you go here, Niko. I do have one obligatory question at the end that I ask everybody. Every CEO is
Sure.
like, if you quit your job tomorrow as a CEO and you had to invest your money that you have right now in other uranium companies, in your peers specifically, what companies would you put your money in? Maybe you can give me 3 companies that you like.
Oh, not my company.
Not your own company. No, you like
Okay.
you leave there, you get angry at everybody, you don't want to talk to anybody, you want to invest your money in a different company.
Okay. I guess I would invest my money in 3 different companies that are quite diverse. I would invest in Cameco because of the stability in a large company like that. I would invest in a mid-tier kind of producer, kind of like let's see, like UEC.
Okay.
And the other company for big upside and big projects I kind of like is Goviax.
Okay. Those are interesting names. All different places and spots in the world.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I'll be following up with the story because the market cap on your own company is indeed low. And maybe we can do an update later down the road. Who knows? But for now, I think I'm done with the questions. Is there something that you came hoping to talk about, but I failed to bring up?
No, I think you've done a really good job bringing out all the points. I'm not trying to hide anything, but points that I may have forgotten or whatnot. And no, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I certainly would look forward to talking to you again.
Well, I look forward to it as well, sir. Thank you for investing your time in me.
My pleasure.